All right, today's topic is competition drives performance. Rich and Maikle with Mainline Executive Coaching, ACT, ACT, Take Action, and ACT also stands for and Cultural Transformation. So, as a leader, you must act. Today, the activities and mindset of competition are what we're going to be discussing. Joining us, we're very happy to have Trevor Maloney. He's been on before. Trevor, introduce yourself, remind us, your background with John Mattone and all that good stuff. Just bring us up to speed for those who have never seen or heard you before.
Yeah, well, thanks guys for having me on again. I feel like it was just a short bit ago, and I'm super pumped to be back. I guess the quick background is I've been a part of John Mattone Global and ILEC for a combination of almost 7-8 years now. I've handled business development efforts, domestic and internationally, right, for over 5 to 7 years, like I mentioned. I also speak, and in the past I've coached my own clients as well. Super passionate about a few things in life: human performance, mindset, and leadership development, right? And those are that's the world, and that's the stuff that I love to talk about and live each and every day, right? And so that's the short story. There's a long one, but that's the short one.
I got to ask you about the human performance part, Trevor. There's some pretty cool videos of you on LinkedIn right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Throwing some pretty big weights around.
Yeah. So a part of I've always been somebody who believes in testing the mind, the body, at the highest level, right? And so as growing up, I was a baseball athlete, and so there was that competitive drive there to kind of test my potential and obviously my performance, right, as an athlete in baseball. And I did that until I was 23 years old, so my entire life. And when I finished playing baseball, I entered into the business world, right? And then I had to recreate that same energy and drive for performance and competitiveness, and it was difficult, right? I mean, through sales you can create that confidence and confidence and competition, right? But I think ultimately I was missing something, and it was the athletic performance. And so what happened was I started to get into CrossFit, and I'll never forget, my wife took me for the first time, and I was like, oh, I got this. I'm an athlete. I'm a Division I baseball athlete. This is going to be a breeze. And I got smoked the first time I did a CrossFit workout. And that was about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, when I realized that this whole CrossFit thing, this fitness thing, beat me as somebody who was always a fit, athletic person, I was challenged, right? I got destroyed in that workout. And I said, you know what, there's something to this. And since then I've been on a track of trying to become the fittest and most mentally strong athlete that I can. And, we look at today, and this last year in the Open, I was, top 4%, top 10% in the world, something like that. And I train twice a day, most of the times a week. And it's just a way for me to, the way I look at it is like this: if that's the hardest thing, most likely, that I'm going to experience in a day, and so everything else after that becomes a breeze, because I'm starting my day with competitive nature and I'm ending my day with a competitive nature. And so if things go wrong in business, if things go wrong, in other areas, it's like I've already put myself through a challenge, and so I'm not taken off guard, right? And so I think that's you see some videos out there. That's just me kind of in the midst of performing at various levels in CrossFit. And I tend to put those out there here and there on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So,
well, that's outstanding. That's great to hear that from you. Give us that mindset of that winner, that competitor. That's great stuff. Thank you so much, Trevor.
Of course.
Let's get into some points that you brought over to here to discuss today. The first one, the killer of collaboration in business. What is the killer of collaboration in business?
Yeah, so this actually came to my mind from fitness again, right? I get a lot of my thinking in the midst of workouts or things that I experience from a fitness perspective. And I often say, well, how does this apply to my business or to someone else's business, right? And I think a lot of times, really what that means is we tend to lean on collaboration to drive results before we lean on competition to drive results. And I think ultimately, not that there's no value in collaboration. I think that collaboration is also key, right, for a lot of things in our pursuits. But I think we have to learn how to be competitive, and we have to reignite the desire to truly win before we can enter the world of collaboration, right? It's like we got to take care of our own house before we can start to help others build theirs. And if we're not in a setting of collaboration, if we're not bringing the absolute best version of ourselves, what type of collaboration is that, right? It's not a very fruitful one. But I think that if we can learn how to become winners, and in fact, we can take that to kind of an extreme and say, in fact, I'm not only going to learn how to be a winner, I want to beat someone else, right? And not in an unethical way, in a way that says, you know what, I'm going to beat you. And I hope you try to beat me, but I'm going to beat you. And I think in today's world, especially amongst millennials like myself, we've lost that sense of collaboration. We've lost that sense of competition, and we lean on collaboration. We lean on, kind of morally superior type of mindsets that make it seem like we're doing the right thing, but instead it's an introspection that we need to say, you know what, we need to take care of our own house. We need to become the best we can be, so that when we enter into collaboration, when someone does need our help, we can show up in the best way that we actually can, right, with our absolute best potential. If that makes some sense to you guys.
Oh, that makes great sense. That's just, I've never heard it said quite like that. That was brilliant.
Yes.
Because there really is a whole lot of this moral stuff going on, right? And the fact of the matter is, if we're attempting to put some sort of collaboration together, but we're not bringing our best to it, what we really do is, we used to call it symbiotic relationships, where it takes two people to make one person.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So it's what you got is two people that are not really independent or independently managing their own selves. They're not autonomous.
Yep.
So you got kind of this other person and this other person. They're kind of dependent on each other. So you just create a weakness rather than a real strength. It's when people show up as strong, motivated, skilled individuals that can then work interdependently. That's when collaboration really works. That's when the best stuff happens, rather than everything's kind of breaking down and falling apart. And then all of a sudden you get into, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. And the finger pointing and the blaming and the shaming starts happening.
Yeah. And you know what, to that point, guys, I mean, when I look back at this past weekend, right, I had a team, right? So that's a form of collaboration, right? I mean, we were a team of CrossFit athletes, and in the midst of that team, right, there's also individuals, and those individuals are myself, my buddy Kyle, and Johan. And when one of my teammates was going up to do a ring muscle up or a deadlift or what, fill in the blank for whatever exercise it was, I would watch them. And when they would come to tag me in, I would want to do it faster and better than they did. But they were on my team. And you ask, why would you want to do that? And it's because, well, if I go faster than them, then I'm making our team stronger. So if I'm outperforming even the people inside of my own team, I'm only aiding to the strength of our team. Right. And I think that we're just missing that. Not only really, in the millennials in the world, but really all over. I think we've been taught this idea of, just overvaluing again that just being nice, right? And I think that there's some holes in that we can really poke at, for sure.
Yeah, that's really well said again. That's being too nice. It becomes a kind of a passive aggressive way of who can be the nicerest.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way to put it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you're talking about. So you're talking about this whole other mindset of, the competition, and being my best hopefully inspires you to become even better, to bring more of it forward on it.
Yeah.
Rich, I know you've been in competition.
Right.
This kind of stuff that you've been in, how that's what Trevor's talking about, work with you when you're with your skiing and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of that is, here's the thing about competition, and it can go two ways. It can either create excitement around what you're doing, or it can create anxiety around what you're doing. And a lot of that depends on how you approach it. The competition, with how it's going to be done, and how the leaders or whoever is laying out this competition as well. For example, if they come to you and say, there's going to be a prize at the end, you're going to get this prize, it's going to be wonderful, that creates excitement around that competition. And so everybody tends to be more innovative. Everybody tends to push themselves, like Trevor was saying, push themselves harder to be and be more innovative in order to get this, and approach it in an ethical way. But if it's approached like, if you don't win this competition, you're going to lose this, whatever it is, you're going to lose money, bonus, an opportunity to carry on. It creates a lot of anxiety around that competition. And so there's both a physiological and psychological impact, the way you either approach competition or it's laid out for you. And here's case in point, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, everybody here remembers what happened to Wells Fargo a while ago. And that was all about creating competition amongst the employees. Well, the anxiety that was created around this did not create innovation. It created some employees to go out there and create millions of unauthorized bank and credit card accounts in order to boost their numbers in this competition. And so what happened, that anxiety created an unethical approach to this competition, which for a very long time put Wells Fargo in a bad light. And I don't know if they've come out of it or not. It just, and that comes the same way you approach competition. Are you realize you're going to win something, which could be improving yourself, or you tell yourself, if I don't win this, I'm going to lose something. And then it's either comes down to being innovative or unethical.
Yeah.
Have you guys been watching that Netflix series called Cobra Kai?
Yes, I actually watched it when I had COVID. The whole thing.
I mean, what we're talking about here is really being, acted out in that show. The people who'll do whatever it takes to win, and even if it means cheating, they will go and they will do that. Then there's kind of the other end. Well, we don't want to be too pushy about this thing. And you can just see these two dynamics figuring out, how do we do this in such a way that not only do we bring our best, but we keep our integrity no matter what. We're going to be our best, train hard, but we're also going to be honest, forthright people that says, we're going to play by the rules, but we're going to push really, really hard. I think that's a very interesting thing that's happening in our culture, that very series itself, because it really does get into this very thing about the moralists and then the bullies. And then there's this other place called the people that are really ethical, that are really moral, that are really highly committed and competitive.
Yeah, and it's very easy to blur the lines between, being ethical and being nice, right? Because sometimes the ethical thing to do isn't to be nice, is to be assertive and to be direct.
Right.
Right. And there's an element of competition to that, right? Because Rich, you kind of brought up a really good point, which was, hey, some people were anxious, others were, innovative, or they were excited, or they were passionate, right, to get a goal done and successful. And I think that in our minds, right, we don't understand the difference between that, right? We don't understand the difference between anxiety, fear, excitement. It's all the same, but it's how we perceive it and it's how we act upon it. And I think the line that holds those two together is our value system, right? And so we can have a strong ethical value system as leaders, whether that's in an athletic setting, whether that's, in the Cobra Kai example, Michael, or whether that's right in our daily lives. Value systems and ethical principles of living ultimately drive our actions. And if we can view that through the lens of either, anxiety, fear, what have you, some people are driven by fear of loss. But if they have a strong foundation of ethical principles they live their life by, it guides them to still take ethical action in the midst of being fearful of a loss. While others, right, they're more driven by, like you said, Rich, which is, hey, if you do this, you're going to get a bonus, or you're going to get this at the end. And I think there's nuance in all of this. And the amazing work that you guys are doing as coaches, as leadership experts, it's like that value system, that core purpose, that ability to view the world through a lens of integrity, honesty, loyalty, and a strong value system is ultimately what's going to drive, how we react in those fearful, exciting, or somewhere in between, periods of our life, right? And that's, so you brought up a really good point that I think is super important for sure.
This idea of the fear of loss, I think that's a very interesting one. I think it's one of the most basic fears that we have. And it gets right to our physiology, the fear of loss of breath, the fear of loss of food, the fear of safety, and all those kinds. Those are just essential, the fear of loss kind of things. The other side of that, though, is this. And so we can apply it to areas that aren't even necessarily that so much in survival. It's not that life and death kind of thing. Just like if I get the report in on time, if I don't, I'm going to lose, and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So there's this ethical base that you talk about here, Trevor, that I really, really dig. I really like that a lot. So essential. Now, you can come out of that and you're looking at a situation and you can feel that fear of loss starting to pull on you, starting to tug on you. You know what I mean? Even though you got this base. So right there in the moment, there has to be a decision made. It was interesting. Before we got on the podcast here today, Rich says something. I'm excited about it. I'm excited. And that's that moment. You can either cave into your fears or you can say, you know what, I'm going to deliberately direct my thinking and my emotions and my actions to, I'm excited. I'm excited about what we're going to do here. I'm excited about the gain I'm excited about we're doing this podcast. It's that moment of decision. And I'm telling you, and I tell this to my clients, when you notice that you're kind of leaning towards the fear, make the decision. Just say to yourself, I'm excited about blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden the brain listens and it goes in that direction. You got to listen to it. All right. Let's talk about this idea. This is a very exciting conversation we're having here, guys. I'm very appreciative of it. There's something called this notion of the winner's mindset and having the success mindset. It used to be very prevalent in our society, and now it seems to kind of going away. And there's this very insidious kind of thing that's going out. The idea that to have a can-do attitude is a bad thing. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a can-do attitude is a bad thing. And I'd like you to address this idea of it's a bad thing. And really and truly, without a can-do attitude, what do you expect is going to happen? How can you possibly win? How can you possibly succeed? How can you possibly become your best? Let's start with Rich. Let's go there and then we'll go to Trevor.
That's a very interesting point about this can-do attitude. And you see a lot of, in society today, you don't see a lot of the can-do, but you see a lot of it's owed to me. Does that make sense? Instead of I can go out and do this and I can win, I can be successful, versus no, it's owed to me. This is owed to me. It's just like the talent pool out there. There is no shortage of talent, no shortage of people that have graduated with great degrees, very smart individuals that they come along and they feel because I have this, it's owed to me. And instead of getting out there and really working hard and buckling down and using those skills and talents they've learned in order to push themselves further, compete, they don't do it. And so there's no heart. It's the problem is not the talent. The problem is not this can do. The problem is it's owed to me. And so if you develop this can-do attitude, I can get out there and I can do whatever, it's going to take to get over the next hump, which I think is kind of becoming a lost art. If you really, in my humble opinion, I think there's too much out there that it's owed to me. It's, the can-do attitude is not as prevalent as it used to be.
Okay, great. Trevor.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And kind of I want to take a different spin on it, right? Because I totally agree with you around the can do, right? There's this loss of kind of focus there where it's like, hey, it's owed to me. It doesn't matter if I can do it, I should have it, right?
Right.
But then there's another set of people. Oftentimes they're great leaders and great performers in many different capacities that understand their capability culture in their own individuality, which is the can do. But then when we get to the next phase and you talk about will do, right, the actual phase of action,
Yeah.
I think that there's a something interesting is happening out there where a lot of people who are extremely competent and driven individuals are almost afraid to tap into the success that they're designed to have on this earth. And I think a part of that is because they're afraid of leaving somebody else behind, right? And that's another kind of shift I've felt like in the leadership culture and culture in general in society today is it's a bad thing to be really successful. It's a bad thing. And we've heard that time and time again, right? And so when we look at can do, will do, and then ultimately, right, must do, I think there's some just again, there's this feeling that if I'm successful, that means I'm making somebody else less successful. And ultimately, we have to understand that anytime we put a hierarchical system in place, there's going to be people that rise to the top and people that don't, right? And we can't get around that. There's no way to get around that unless we make everybody, get paid the exact same amount of money, get the same amount of opportunities, get the same, and there's no way we can do that, right? And so the way I view it is can do, nothing is owed to me. That means that I owe everything to myself. And will do means, hey, listen, like I could be as capable, talented, smart, you fill in the blank as I want or as I am. And if I don't actually take action because of a fear of success or because of fear I'm going to leave someone behind, I'm always going to be where I am. And I think that, one of the things that I love about a famous person that I read named is Dr. Jordan Peterson, he says that everything you do matters, right? And I really believe that. Like every single decision we make on a daily basis actually matters. It makes the world either a better place or a worse place. And if you don't step up to that will do, if you don't take action, then I think that you're not only are you not, I guess, breaking away and maybe leaving someone else behind, you're also not inspiring anyone else to become all that they can be, right? And so I know I kind of bounced around a little bit there, but I just really like what you said about kind of that entitlement. And then in my mind, it's like one step further. It's like, well, then the people that actually want success, sometimes are afraid to actually freaking go get it, right? And that's another element of discussion as well.
That'd be a good one to follow up on. This conversation reminds me of a story that's told in The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. If you've ever had a chance to read that book. He's a very successful businessman, publisher of Success Magazine, right? Mm-hmm. And he had a secretary that there was doing some promotions and so on, and she was his secretary, and she kind of was left out of it. And she felt her nose was a little bit out of joint. Mm-hmm. And she went to him, well, these people are having all these things, but I can't even get by on what it is that I'm making, working with you. He said, well, let's take a look and see what you're doing. Let's take a look at, first off, how you're spending your money. How do you budget it? And so we helped her kind of start seeing how she could start saving money and start putting things away so that she wasn't running out of, money before the end of the month, kind of a thing. But then he started getting her going, thinking in a different way. It's that whole thing that you're talking about here, Trevor, the idea of the zero-sum game. And that's not real. Some people want us to believe that the zero-sum game is no matter how, it's always the same. If somebody wins, that means somebody else loses. Rather than let's grow the pie, let's find new opportunities, let's develop new opportunities. That's the whole thing. That's what he taught her how to do. By the time she was done, and I think it was just in several years, before she couldn't even hardly, jog. Now she was involved in these triathlons. She was making all sorts of money. She went into business for herself. She became actually a very wealthy woman. She didn't buy the idea of I can't, nor did she buy the idea I'm entitled. There are those two things. I can't and I'm entitled. Instead, she said, I can, I will do, and I must do, and she did do.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome.
All right, very good. All right, we're going to sign off. Trevor, it's been great having you here. You're always an inspiration, my friend. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
As we unplug and go out our separate ways, anything you want to leave us with, and then we'll turn it over to Rich to wrap it up.
I think it's always great to talk about these things in general, right? Whether it's a human performance thing, leadership, a mindset thing, or anything in between. It's always fun to explore different ways of viewing the world, right? That's ultimately what we're talking about here. And there's different ways to do that for everyone, and everyone has different triggers, things that drive them, right? Things that get them, off of the couch, for lack of a better phrase. And I guess my goal, anytime I get the chance to share my thoughts, is to, at least inspire somebody that says, you know what, I've been stagnant for a while. I've been, just kind of not taking my opportunities in full stride. And maybe some of the words that we shared today could have done that for at least one person that listens, right? And so thank you guys so much as always. And that's about it for me.
Again, thank you so much. Rich, wrap it up, please.
Well, once again, and Trevor, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. And if you want to get a hold of us, we have some new email addresses. So mbailey@intelligentleadershipec.com, or rbarron@intelligentleadershipec.com, or richbarron.intelligentleadershipec.com. Leave us a note. Tell us what you think. You want to hear something else on a future podcast. We welcome all comments, concerns, whatever. So once again, thank you very much.
The whatevers. We like those. We like the whatevers.
The whatever. That creates tension and whatever. that competitive spirit. We have to read the whatevers and compete against those, right? Anyway, have a great day, everybody. Once again, thanks for joining us, and take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. All the best.
Once again, thank you for joining us. If you have any suggestions or comments, or something you'd like to hear about on a future podcast, email us at mbailey@intelligentleadershipec.com or rbarron@intelligentleadershipec.com, or go to our website, richbarron.intelligentleadershipec.com. Once again, thank you and take care.